Alright, after the absolute disaster that was my choice of videos in the previous stream, I spent a little time looking, trying to find something interesting, something unique, something random for us to watch. And in this case, I think I've found something that will suffice. In this case, we have from the channel NW Creation Network, I presume Northwest Creation Network, which, incidentally enough, has some old Kent Hovind content, which is actually what got me curious to look at what else might be on their channel and see if I'd find some gems. There's a few little speaking seminar, um, preaching sessions, whatever one wants to call them, that are made into these little video series. And I thought this one on the solar system, wonderfully designed for us. Part one, origin theories, would suffice. Let's see if we got anybody in the stream yet. There we go. Everything looks like it's working well. One thing I want to point out is if you look down here, we got Chris Ashcraft apparently is the presenter. MS, MED, MTMS. I, I figured this was Masters in Science and Masters in Education. Yeah. Then the MTMS apparently means he belongs to some kind of society, so it isn't actually an academic credential. It's like, hey, I'm a member of this organization. Whoop-de-doo. Masters of Science, this is the classic thing where they try to attribute them as being more educated and more informed on subjects than they really are. Um, they're not specifying that he has any relevant knowledge in cosmology, cosmogony, planetary sciences, physics, geology, geography, any of that stuff. The field could be in, applied mechanics, that kind of thing. And just because you're a teacher, you're only qualified to teach so much. I don't want to belittle teachers, but just because you're a teacher doesn't mean you actually know jack diddly squat about anything else to any degree better than any other person. Or, even worse, like a hobbyist person who does this stuff for fun, like, me. Um, but just like Hovind and everything else that goes down, this is him just having all his stuff padded out because, of course, it would be. Why wouldn't you pad it out? It makes me look more important. So, without further ado, let us get to this. I'm going to tell you this isn't going to be the most exciting thing from their end, but I've only watched a tiny fraction of it to see that it's at least watchable, unlike the other garbage. So, let's see if we can find some gems here.
Well, the solar system is itself a marvel of engineering and design. But today, natural science tries to minimize the significance of this design and argue for a purely natural origin for both the.
See, you're just starting off the bat just with the presumption, which of course you're going to, that it's designed, but you have no way, shape, or form to demonstrate this design. Of course, that's what we're here for, to see what you demonstrate. But I highly doubt you're going to have anything more convincing than anything Hovind has ever let out, because there's nothing creationists, especially youngest creationists, have ever said that's remotely convincing. But let's see where you go. I already want to call you out on trying to reverse things, but we'll hold off just a hair.
The solar system and the cosmos. Despite their view on origins, however, the universe is referred to today as a cosmos, which means ordered and harmonious. That's what the word cosmos means. It's the opposite.
And the word meaning honestly means precisely fuck all in this case, because it's just the name we applied to it from thinking about that meaning. If that's even an accurate definition. I can't say one way or the other, but I don't take anything a creationist says at face value. Wouldn't matter if that is what it means, though, because it's irrelevant to the actuality, to the reality of things.
Opposite of the word chaos. But the universe is not a chaotic mess.
No, order is the opposite of chaos, and depending on how you look at it, yes, the universe is a chaotic mess. It's just there's a beauty in this chaos. This chaos, oddly enough, in and of itself forms a kind of structure. And that sounds like it's completely contradictory, but it really isn't. There's going to be patterns in everything. If I may go off on one of my many little tangents, there is extremely high speed film of atomic weapons during the 40s and 50s being tested, airbursts that controlled airbursts that show um, the actual initial sphere of plasma growing, and you can see the irregularities in the actual density of the critical mass when the weapon was triggered. Tiny pressure differences, ironically similar to what we see in the cosmic microwave background, as showing the anisotropity, God, I can't say that, of everything in the universe, that it wasn't truly that homogeneous. It was, different levels of density and the like. Point is, that's still absolute chaos, but there's a beauty to it. There's an order to it. But you cannot tell me for a second that the detonation of a nuclear weapon is anything but a kind of chaos. But it still is absolutely beautiful to see that sphere in those moments growing, realizing how much energy is in there. It's equally terrifying, but I find an extreme beauty in that. And the whole universe to me appears the same way. Absolute chaos that is at least following, sounds weird to say following a basic structure, following a kind of order, because that kind of defeats the idea of calling it chaos, but stuff is still doing what it's going to do. If you had absolute pure chaos, nothing would exist because there would be literally no rules, no presence, no, how to phrase it, strict properties to the universe. Even those being there doesn't mean it's designed, doesn't mean it's created, and again, wouldn't necessarily be any the way I'd call it ordered.
Like you would expect from following a great cosmic explosion like the Big Bang, it's orderly.
Wasn't an explosion. Stop calling it an explosion.
And harmonious. That's what the word cosmos comes from. So we're going to take a tour of the solar system. I will pause briefly on this slide where there's a QR code here that will allow you to take down the lecture notes. So we're going to take us a little tour of the solar system. We're going to discuss the fine tuning that we see that makes life possible. During our tour, we're going to stop at each of the planets and many of the moons as well and discuss their unique qualities and the many discoveries that have been made by space probes and the like that have come to challenge the naturalism, a natural...
No. No space probe in any way, shape, or form has ever challenged naturalism. Every single thing we've sent out there has just cemented our understanding of the actual science that's going on, added more information to refine our understanding of what's going on various worlds. It's going on through the interplanetary medium, out through the universe, but we're focusing on the solar system here. So, talking Voyager 1, 2, Pioneer 10, 11, a couple of Mars probes. No, it's more than a couple of Mars probes. Venus probes. Remember, Soviet Union landed on Venus. They fucking landed probes. We got one through the atmosphere. It made it to the ground, but it was dead by the time it did. And we have photos from the surface of Venus. That's pretty freaking crazy. I love that. But no, none of these machines sent out through cold hard science. By the way, no one prayed them into orbit. All they show is a universe that behaves by naturalistic processes.
Origin of the solar system. As each new discovery is made today in astronomy, the design and handiwork of our Creator is revealed time and time again. Well,
yeah, Tubian. Big Bang was originally coined as a pejorative to the concept of the initial cosmic inflation, and it stuck as a nice colloquialism. And of course, because creationists have to take everything literally, they just run on that logic. Oh, it was an explosion, a dot of nothing, boomed into everything. Creationist.
Astronomical bodies, as we should know, were formed on the fourth day of creation. Genesis 1:14.
Yeah, according to your stupid myth.
and 19 describes their various purposes. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night.
Yeah, except the moon isn't a light. And also, the moon is actually out equally over the course of any given measurement of time, like a month, 2 months, what have you. Out as much in the day as it is at night.
And the stars also. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. Well, humans have long struggled to explain the precision of the cosmos through various cosmological models.
No, it appears precise because of our tendency to be pattern-seeking creatures. We see what we look at as some kind of order. Orbits of the planets, movement of the stars through the year, day-night cycles, lunar cycles, etc. We latch onto that. And because it's something that we're wired to pick up on in such a way, and we also have this habit of personification and pareidolia of attributing simple natural things as having, some kind of agency behind them. You see faces in cars, you see faces in things, you hear the wind rushing some stuff, and because of revolutionary history, you think it might be something, in the corner ready to get you. You don't know. And it turns out, nope, just the wind blowing some brush, and maybe a squirrel. I don't know. We see a beauty in things, and we attribute that beauty to some kind of agency as a kind of helpful defect in our brain. The same helpful defect that I believe is the spawn of all religion. In this case, just a lesser example of that.
Copernicus, shown here, is responsible for our current model of the solar system and is regarded today as the founder of modern astronomy. He referred to the cosmos as, quote, "built for us by the best and most orderly workman of all."
And I don't give a flying fuck what Copernicus said. All I care about are the facts. This is gonna be the constant thing. This is like the constant thing with me and all this creationist bullshit. They love bringing up random quotes. I don't give a fuck who said what. I don't. All I care about is the facts. The actual data. The actual discoveries. I may reference the person who made a given discovery and their commentary on it if I find that relevant for establishment purposes, or if I'm questioned on it and I happen to know the answer off the cuff. But in the grand scheme, I don't give a flying fuck about them, their lives, or what they said, because it's not relevant to the facts. So you can miss me with that shit. Get to your actual points.
Most of the scientists that were
Oh, and yeah, Deviant, you didn't miss anything. That last stream was absolute garbage. I gave up. Like, I gave it 10 minutes into the video we were watching, and there was just no way. If I'd have known it was the kind of horribly edited crap it was, boring as hell, I wouldn't have bothered.
were responsible for not just the scientific revolution, but were the founders of most of our science disciplines, believed in the God of that the God of the Bible made the cosmos, made the earth, and most were very committed to the existence of God, and for most Christianity as well. Well, rather than chaos, randomness, and disorder, as one would expect again from a cosmic accident like the Big Bang, we find clockwork precision given.
The Big Bang isn't an accident, and we don't find clockwork precision. Repeating events you can set a clock to, certainly, but that's just kind of the nature of timekeeping. Repeated events, especially ones that are steady, happen to be a very good way to measure time. They act as a base that can't be manipulated. We know how long a day roughly is on the planet. We've known for a long time. We've gotten far more precise with it. And while our calendar and cycles and stuff don't actually match up exactly, they're quite adequate for our day-to-day, year-to-year lives with minor adjustments. Single events that have to happen. No big deal. Could be better? Sure. But sure, it's good enough. But it's not clockwork. We're just noticing a pattern.
Governs the cosmos at every level. The solar system, shown here, consists of our sun, 8 planets. We got 4 terrestrial planets or rocky planets, 4 gas giants. Plus we got the dwarf planet Pluto, asteroids.
And a lot of other dwarf planets. I find it nice that you at least acknowledge that there's 8 planets. Because there's still people out there who bitch and moan about the demotion of Pluto and totally misinterpret what that means. But I would expect if you were such a good science guy, Bill Nye, you're not claiming to be, but you're trying to be a science guy here, that you'd understand the other dwarf planets like Ceres. It's one of many, rather famous one. Funny it's not depicted here on your art, but Pluto sure is out there.
Meteorites and comets. Astronomers have determined that the other planets in the solar system stabilize the distance of the Earth from the sun, keeping the Earth.
Everything kind of work together. That's how gravity works. That's how orbits work. They're gonna find an equilibrium. And I know what you're about to say is that the planets were put there specifically to get the Earth in the spot it's in. No, we happen to be on a planet that happens to be in position to support life, because if it wasn't in a position to support life, there wouldn't be any life on it to wonder, hey, why are we in this particular spot? Or to come up with crazy ass ideas. Like Magic Sky Daddy just poofing things into existence. I get so bored by these arguments. I don't know why I do this and expect to hear anything new.
Earth from approaching too close or moving too far away. These planets also protect the Earth from comets, meteors, and asteroids. God created.
Yeah, tell the dinosaurs that. The non-avian ones, anyway. You want to know what's really weird to think about? Is that every single one of us is the descendant of a particular branch of early mammal that survived that event. Somewhere down the line, we all branch to a population of early mammal that witnessed the KT event, that was there for it. Oh, your grandfather fought in World War II? Oh, your great-great-great-grandfather was in the Civil War? Oh, man, you're one of those people who happens to have a genetic relation to Genghis Khan? Wow, that's pretty fucking cool. Every single one of us is the descendant of a population that fucking survived that mass extinction. But not only that, it gets even more weird when you think we're the descendants of creatures that survived every mass extinction. That is fucking crazy. And I've actually never really thought about that way till now. It's just fucking awesome. We got 4 billion years of survival, and I'm the result. Ancestors rolling around in their graves. Ugh. If I knew any species names offhand, I'd do a joke. Sorry, ancient mammal name here. Sorry it was such a letdown. Like the Doctor Who quote, we're a planet inhabited by psychotic apes. Let's continue.
Created for us a remarkable solar system positioned around the sun that was perfectly formed and positioned. Our space telescopes and spacecraft.
No, it wasn't perfectly formed in position. Can you guys explain Mercury's orbit? I would like for you to explain Mercury's orbit, okay? Because it don't orbit right. Now, Newtonian physics tried and failed. Relativity explains it pretty well, but I want to see how it makes sense in your God's plan for this perfectly organized, perfectly made solar system to have, Mercury orbiting the way it is. Have Venus be the hellscape it is. Have, hell, some moons and stuff. Why they even exist? Why does Jupiter have like 200 moons? And I know the count is lower than that. Actually, I don't even know. Is it up even higher now? How many moons does Jupiter have? Oh, only 85. Only 85. But I'm counting all the random tiny ass asteroids we've never detected because there's got to be 100 of those. Just lots of stuff that just seems weird. Almost as if it just kind of happened that way.
Have given us close-up views of these planets shown here. All of these photos were taken by spacecrafts.
Those are computer renderings. I mean, the other one used texture data from Mars, or no, that was
these planets.
Mars. No, that's Venus's surface. That's Venus, I think. Like, I'm 90% sure that's the surface of Venus when you take away its clouds.
Shown here. All of these photos were taken by spacecrafts.
But I mean, this is straight up CG. And I really hate this when people. This is like the evidences thing, but a little different because it's not an uncountable noun thing. It's just a particular pet peeve. When people say spacecrafts and aircrafts, it's like when an appropriate plural is just aircraft, spacecraft. These aircraft, these spacecraft. It's one of those things where the plural and the singular are the same. So you don't need to S it. The other suffices. Just find it overly complicated. And I've got a rant on evidences that I want to go into, but I'm saving that for a dedicated thing.
Our technologies have given us close views of these things that no one has ever seen before. Previously, these planets were just seen as pinpoints of light. Now, we are able to see aspects of God's creation because of technology.
If you having mammal problems, I feel bad for you, son. I got 99 problems. But a fish surviving the great extinction ain't one. I don't know. I just had to come up with something. So bad news for you, Tubian. My granddaddy wasn't no monkey. Yes, he was. And hate to warn you, or hate to shock you, but you're a monkey. Dun, dun, dun. Oh. People make a lot more sense when you realize we're just big dumb apes.
Technology no one else has seen before. It is truly amazing to live in these times when technologies have allowed us to see and investigate parts of God's creation that no one in past generations has seen. Truly God's handiwork.
Oh, I see it now. For a second, I thought the Earth had like some giant tumor on the bottom. Then I realized, oh, that's just cloud cover with the illumination. Okay.
Work has been revealed to us like no other time in the history of the Earth. Well, while the solar system is a masterfully engineered body, secular
except it's not.
Scientists claim that it formed by purely natural processes from a nebula. Now, nebulae.
All right, we're going to need you to prove you're God before you go any further. Otherwise, shut the fuck up.
Are clouds of gas and dust that are believed to be the remains of stars that have exploded or undergone supernova. We call these nebula.
A standard event, nova event, like, just not even necessarily a conventional nova event. Just the typical death of an average star like our sun will produce a small nebula. I ironically called a planetary nebula, even though that's an after-the-fact thing. That's the corpse, ejected gases of the corpse of a star.
Many of these nebula are massive. Within the Orion constellation shown here, we find a nebula called the Orion Nebula, and this is massive. It is 13 light years in size. To understand the size of this, traveling at the speed of light, that's 186,000 miles per second.
Creationists will measure anything in the universe in any way they can other than metric.
It would take 13 years to get from one side of this nebula to the other side of the nebula. These things are just absolutely massive. And again, believed to be...
Okay, gonna be real. I don't know. I feel like people remotely talking about involved. Like, I know these people aren't going to know what the hell a light year is. Not that they're going to give a shit either. They don't care about this kind of stuff. But if you have to explain what a light year is to a group, you're already talking about concepts that are way over their level, even if you're explaining it through a creationist lens. I don't know. That's kind of my barometer for if I'm even going to fuck around with stuff. Is it gatekeeping? Maybe. I don't know. I'm just like, if you're like Hovind and don't understand what a light year actually is, which this guy did, but if you have to explain to your audience, yeah. You got some 101 level stuff here.
Gas and dust clouds left behind by stars that have exploded or undergone supernova. Well, secular science claims that our solar system, both the sun and the planets, formed about 4...
Yeah, him saying technologies is just like the evidences thing, where it's an uncountable noun and should be these pieces of technology are just, we have the technology, this technology allows. And let the record show that AJ's tits are calm. Hey, buddy.
4.6 billion years ago, through purely natural processes of within one of these nebula.
You say that so just scoffingly, like through purely natural processes. It's like, yeah. It's funny. You don't scoff at trees growing in the sunlight, purely natural process. You don't scoff at the dump you took this morning before you spewed this dump into a little sermon presentation thing. Purely natural process, except for the unnaturally processed food that you ate. But you scoff at that. You guys talk about your big bad God, so infinitely powerful, so incomprehensibly capable. But when it comes to things like this, it's too above your scale. So your brain just shuts down and says, "Nuh-uh."
The theory asserts that as the nebula rotated due to regional movements within the galaxy, it began to collapse, became condensed somehow, and flattened into a disk. A central bulge.
Stacy, you made the mistake of going out to where other humans are in America on Easter fucking weekend. We're right smack dab in the middle of their stupid ass Jesus character having his crappy little day and a half off. And they're not going to shut up about it. If I was more of an asshole, I'd go someplace just to tell them to fuck off. But I have better things to do. Like, I need to write a piece on an historical event that happened 30 years ago today. Write a piece for my website so that I can actually have something published this month. Because I've been heavily neglecting Zadara. However, my BBS conversion to forums has been a rousing success, and you should definitely go to finalzone.net, link in my description, and sign up and join in on the conversation. Yeah, that's a segue.
Formed in the middle and became our sun. Smaller collections of materials became the planets. This is the prevailing theory for the origin of the solar system. Well, there's a number of problems. A number of problems with this, a number of theories.
There's a number of problems with this. I can't make fun of anybody stammering. I constantly hit roadblocks in my speech, but it's still funny since this is relatively prepared.
That have been put forth to explain the mysterious collapse of the nebula that formed our solar system. Some say it collapsed under its own gravity. Others invoke cooling to reverse the natural tendency of a gas to expand. And more recently, collisions have, as a mechanism, have begun to dominate the theory on the solar system formation.
Okay, wow, way to mix a whole bunch of crap together. Okay, I really take it apart. Excuse me, you didn't even mix it together. You unmixed it. You tore multiple facets apart. And want to act like they're separate, independent things, and that they come about as different time frames when these are just elements of star formation. Let's hit with cooling first. Yeah, the residual material ejected from the dying star that will form a given planetary nebula, a supernova, the resulting ejecta from a supernova, all the dead star material that's put out there. It's going to still be nice and toasty. It's going to cool. I'm really dumbing this down for the layperson. Not my audience, but creationists who find this crap and are somehow still watching. In which case, hi, how you doing? Thanks for sticking around. The material will cool. This means it's going to be a little less energetic, going to be moving around a little less in the way gases like to do. And so gravity will have the opportunity to better pull stuff together. Where collisions, where friction will warm it up again. But gravity kind of wins out in most cases. It's hard for even me to wrap my head around that much matter, that much mass coalescing. But it's enough. I've crunched numbers at scale. I've had, AI and calculator programs do it, but still, it checks out. A whole heck of a lot of that material is going to coalesce in around the densest area. It's going to do that. You give stuff, that kind of environment, that kind of space from anything else with a heavy mass, it's going to do it. It's going to want to collect together. That's how gravity works. Starts rubbing up against itself, starts getting kind of hot. That sounded way kinkier than it should have. Hell yeah. We're getting into some we're getting to stellar reproduction here, so hold on to your butts, babies. You eventually reach a point where you're going to actually be able to get fusion. You're going to have a lot of mass there, a fuck ton of mass, but there is a value where you get to that point. And the star effectively ignites. Protostar goes and starts beginning its main early to main sequences. The rest of the material gets pushed away by the heat, by additional pressure, radiative pressure, but it's going to be orbiting, coalesces into the various planets, various rocky bodies, gas giants, what have you. It's a complicated process. There's a lot going on, and we don't quite understand it. And some elements of our solar system kind of contradict the way things should be, but we're trying to figure it out. And it's fine to say we don't know. Just because you don't know something doesn't mean that Magic Sky Daddy is the answer. Let's hear how he butchers all this.
Now, this is a long-standing theory, in fact, going all the way back to the 1700s. And give you a little background on this. In 1755,
Jesus had a bad Friday and Saturday. That's it. Fucking wuss.
Immanuel Kant first argued that gaseous clouds, these nebula, slowly rotated and gradually collapsed and flattened due to gravity, eventually forming stars.
And once again, he brought up Kant there. I don't give a fuck who said what. All I care about are the facts.
Stars and planets. In 1796, Pierre-Simon Laplace put forth a theory arguing for a contracting and cooling proto-solar cloud, what he called the proto-solar nebula. He argued that as it cooled and contracted, it flattened and spun more rapidly, throwing off or shedding a series of gas.
Yeah, it flattened. It condensed due to gravity. See how all this is related?
Gaseous rings of material, and according to him, the planet.
It's almost like he's intentionally treating these elements of it as separate things, separate ideas, so that it'll make the scientists look silly. But no, a person of God wouldn't do that. They wouldn't lie. They wouldn't misrepresent the facts.
It's condensed from this material. This is a long-standing theory. Well, there's a major problem with this theory. It violates some of the basic laws of physics. See, gas and dust clouds don't contract, they expand through what we call diffusion. Diffusion is is the process through which molecules
Say it with me, everyone. Gravity. Gravity, you fucking moron. Have you ever heard of gravity? Gravity!
spread out
Shout out to Desert File for that ancient yet wonderful piece of video.
through time. It occurs both in gases and in liquids. If I, for example, if I spritz a little bit of perfume over here, there's a concentration of like perfume vapor over here. Those molecules.
Stacy, it was a case of 69, and then after that, they had some 420 on 420.
In that little cloud of perfume will continue. Molecules have a little bit of inherent motion to them and causes them to bang into one another as they collide into one another.
He talked about particles banging. Also, he knows fuck all about science and about this subject. What an idiot. By the way, did I mention that comments are disabled on this channel? Because comments are disabled on this channel. Just saying. Not that that's intrinsically a bad thing. Honestly, I totally get it. Insofar as you want the media to just be there, you can't leave a comment on a TV show as you're watching it. I mean, I guess in theory you can now. But like, go back to 1995. I ain't sitting there watching The Simpsons at 7 o'clock and being able to, in real time, just scroll down on Fox and leave a comment on the episode, Yeah, go somewhere else to do that stuff. And so some places will treat YouTube like the content distribution network rather than social aspect. And I actually prefer that. Honestly, there's a lot of other stuff I would produce if YouTube was better oriented to be just a CDN. But it's not, so I might as well do this kind of stuff and interact with you guys.
They move further apart. Well, when you add energy, by the way of heat or electricity or anything else, those molecules move even faster and faster, and they spread out even more quickly. This happens in both liquids and in gases. In a cold situation, diffusion happens very slowly. And when you add energy to it, it's going to happen much more rapidly. Well, astronomer Fred Whipple stated in The Mystery of Comets,
I don't give a flying fuck what Fred Whipple said. Also, this is from the year I was fucking born.
the following. He says precisely how a section of interstellar cloud collapsed gravitationally into a star is still a challenging theoretical problem.
Ooh, note the ellipses. That means they took something out.
Astronomers have yet to find an interstellar cloud in the actual process of collapse.
Really now? Have they?
They have yet to see one in the process of collapse. And this remains the prevailing theory going back all the way to the 1700s.
Yeah, if I had more time to just go back, I should probably make a note too. In fact, what I'll actually do is screenshot that. I'm going to go back and check that comment after we're done. Because I am certain that is one hell of a quote mine. Which, again, doesn't matter because I don't care what any given person says. But I want to point out the dishonesty.
And Dr. Don DeYoung, shown here, agrees. Now, he has a PhD in physics from Iowa State and is a professor and department chair at Grace College, and he's the president of the Creation Research Society.
Yes, president of the Creation Research Society. No bias at all, though.
One of the big creation organizations in this country. You have Institute for Creation Research, Answers in Genesis, and Creation Research Society, kind of the big three. He's the president of the CR.
Yeah, AJ. Complaining about on Usenet and the like. But they didn't complain about it on Fox. That's my whole thing. Is like, oh, if I want to complain about this video, I can share it on my forums, finalzone.net, and we could talk about it there. That's the kind of thing I'm getting at.
RS. He says this: the complete birth of a star has never been observed. The principles of physics demand some.
Let the record show that AJ loves Stacy. And we all love AJ. Therefore, vicariously, we all love Stacy. Just not in the same way. You guys are awesome, though. Love having you here.
Special conditions for star formation and also for
Also, you can tell I grew up in the 90s because they use you guys as a collective term for everybody, regardless of gender. It's like dude being genderless. I kind of tried not to do that, but it just happens. And I at least try to be aware that if someone was upset by it, I would, try to correct my speech. But I feel it's understood still that by, in my audience at least, because we're all, older, that it's a general grouping thing.
long time period. A cloud of hydrogen gas must be compressed to a sufficiently small size.
Got a $5 super chat from AJ. I'm going to be streaming as soon as this ends to review TK Hovind debate. Dude, hell yeah. I am going to be in chat. I didn't touch it because I didn't know you would, but like I knew you would. So I'm like, I'm not going to hit that. I'm going to let AJ hit that. At least I'm having fun with this stream. Let's keep going.
Size so that gravity dominates. He continues.
Oh, and I forgot to say thank you for the super chat as well, AJ.
In space, however, almost every gas cloud is light years in size, hundreds of times greater than the critical size needed for a stable star. As a result, outward gas pressure causes these clouds to spread out further.
Okay, so what Mr. Christian Science Dude is telling me that, the gas volume of a star is fine, containing itself. I hate to talk like a flat earth or like flat earth adjacent stuff, but being in the structure it is, being condensed like it is, going through the reaction it is without blowing apart. But the gigantic cloud, far more massive, because this guy says so, can't collapse in on itself. So what you're telling me, dude, is that the elephant runs faster than the cheetah. And that the bigger thing, where gravity would have an even higher influence, doesn't collapse, but the smaller stuff can stay how it is. What? Oh, well, once again, this guy wrote astronomy in the Bible in the year 2000. So, 25 years ago.
Not contract. Danny Faulkner, shown here, holds a PhD in astronomy from Indiana University and taught at the University of South Carolina for 26 years. He today serves as the editor of the Creation Research Society Quarterly, a quarterly publication produced by the CRS, and has published over 100 papers in various scientific journals. He now works as a researcher and author and a speaker for Answers in Genesis, which is the big organization that built the full-size ark and the creation.
Oh, you mean the full-size ark that's about to be protested again? Yeah, that ark. Hey, go to ark. Is it arkencounterprotest.com? Yeah, let me. Sorry, my Firefox is not working well with me today. My God, I just want the URL. It should not be that hard of a thing. There we go. There you go. Sorry, it's the Wix site link, but it's to the same proper site. For those interested, as if you all didn't already know about the Ark Encounter protest and the fact I am more than likely going with Seth. All right.
Museum down in Indiana. Anyway, Danny Faulkner says this: most astronomers believe that clouds gradually contract under their.
All physical weaponry just goes right through the Firefox, and my hand gets burned. So I've determined it takes no melee damage, and I have no magical artifacts to attack it with, so we're at a stalemate.
Their own weight to form stars. This process has never been observed, but if it did occur, it would take many human lifetimes. He continued.
So what you're saying is you expect something that you fully acknowledge to happen over a long course of time to be visible in one lifetime, but you know it won't be, and you don't accept our ability to see stars in every stage of formation, because there's a whole lot of stars out there and a whole lot of nebulae and a whole lot of baby stars doing their thing. You reject that, though. You want to see one continuous line of star formation. Right.
Continues. It is known that clouds do not spontaneously collapse to form stars. The clouds possess considerable mass, but they are so large that their gravity is very feeble.
Not internal to themselves. You flying through wouldn't feel anything, but over the broad time, the constant gravitational pull of all that mass wants to coalesce. That's how it works.
Any decrease in size would be met by an increase in gas pressure that would cause a cloud to re-expand. This whole theory violates some basic laws of physics. Well, again, clouds expand
Except it doesn't.
until they become evenly distributed. So if I that little spritz of perfume over here, those molecules will continue to spread out. Eventually, you would start to smell it back there, and eventually become evenly distributed. This is what.
No, it actually mostly settled down near where it was sprayed and settled down to the floor and on anything that the particles fall on. Some of it being suspended in the air, sure. But you're talking about spraying a gas into, or a vaporized compound into, an area that's already existing gas on a big ass planet. It's not space. It's not the universe, man. It's not how stuff works. Not at these kinds of scales. The fuck are you on about?
Gases do. They do not spontaneously collapse to form stars. The inability for gravitational control.
No. I've got nothing to add except silly comments in the chat. AJ is going to nail his coverage of Joe's debate with Hovind. It's going to be nice.
Traction and cooling to account for this phenomena has led to another theory. This is that collisions were responsible. It is argued that a supernova.
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. That kind of perturbation would speed up the process, jumpstart things quite a bit. It's absolutely reasonable.
Nearby might have caused a nebula to become compressed sufficiently. An obvious problem with this mechanism, or that the nebula theory in general, if you may have noticed, is that it requires what? The origin of stars requires what? Stars.
That's not the only process. That's just one way it could be jump started in a molecular cloud. You're lying.
It requires a nebula, a gas and dust cloud produced by a star that is theoretically, exploded or gone supernova, to be compressed to sufficiently dense size to allow new stars to form. All current theories for the origin of stars require pre-existing stars. There's no
No, they don't.
theory on the table that accounts for those first stars.
Let's see, a universe that's heavily made of hydrogen from cosmic inflation from the point of the Big Bang. Yeah. Think there's enough gas hanging around to form a few stars. Some pretty big ones, too. Live fast, die young, the population 3 stars. Those things were incredible. It's wild to imagine. And I'm not even get started on the idea that many population 3 stars might have been black hole stars, where they were actually a functional star shell with the core actually being a black hole. And there being so much mass there that they reached stellar fusion outside of the black hole. So you still had the outward pressure going in plenty, but that thing was consuming matter like nobody's business. Just wild stuff to think about. Terrifyingly wild. Still just a what if, but nothing says it couldn't have happened.
Well, the other bodies in the solar system, meaning your asteroids and planetesimals and planets, are believed to have formed by accretion. As gas and dust coalesce,
I'd like to note that accretion is one of my favorite words.
larger particles of dust would form. These stuck together to become rocks, which became even bigger rocks, which became asteroids, and then planetesimals, which became planets. During accretion, small grains stick to one another via electromagnetic forces,
Mostly gravity. There'd be some static potential, sure, but that would have jump started the smaller bits. But once you reach the larger bits, it's gravity.
static electricity, causes things to stick together until they're massive enough to attract via gravity to form
Oh, okay. You were. I was just jumping ahead of you there. All right. You said you got one thing correct.
planetesimals. Everything has a little bit of gravity. The larger something is, the more gravitational attraction it has.
The more of a distortion in space-time it creates, because for some strange reason, baryonic matter, well, actually, hell, non-baryonic matter as well, distorts space-time. Which is weird because raw energy doesn't distort space-time, but matter sure as hell does. I'm working my way through that one in my sci-fi project, trying to come up with an explanation for anti-gravity or gravity reproduction tech. Anyway, but yeah, that's the more accurate way to describe it.
Well, this is the prevailing theory for the origin of the solar system. The nebula theory is said to account for a number of the features of the solar system, in fact.
Like basically all of them. Also, why you got the Cat's Eye Nebula down there? Supernova remnant. Forget what year that baby went blue. I mean, Crab Nebula was like, or is that the Crab Nebula? I think that's Cat's Eye. I can't remember my freaking nebulae. Um, Crab Nebula was like 11th century, I think. Now let me double check. Yeah, that's not the Crab Nebula. Crab Nebula looks awesome. Not that that one doesn't, but. Or is it? Whatever.
For example, the flattened shape of the solar system, all the planets orbit around the sun in a disk called the.
Yeah, if you notice, lots of things orbit that way. It's the most energy stable way things flatten out like that because of rotation, centripetal force, whichever one it is. Rotational forces acting on the mass.
Plane of the ecliptic, except for Pluto, which is a little bit weird. It's said to explain the counterclockwise orbits of all the planets. It's said.
Laura, that's just it. I do not know. All I can say is I guess it's an intrinsic side effect of energy becoming matter is the distortion of spacetime. So maybe it's something related to what causes things to stay as stable matter insofar as we think about it for the context of this discussion. I don't know. But this is like my sci-fi gold right there. Trying so hard to come up with something that, while, not necessarily realistic per se, has a bunch of actual science built into it to where it can work. That's the kind of sci-fi I really like.
Said to explain the existence of the inner rocky planets and the outer gaseous planets. Being too close to the sun made it impossible for things like water and volatile gases to condense, and so they say only rocky planets would form there. Further from the sun, being cooler, gases were able to condense, forming what we call the gas giants, like Saturn and Jupiter, etc. However, the physics of it doesn't work. You can get up to planetesimals, but not planets with this view, with the physics. Martin Hewitt says in the Astrophysical Concepts, once these planetesimals have been formed, further growth of planets may occur through gravitational accretion into large bodies, but just how that takes place is not understood.
Sorry, had a bit of a yawn come on me right there. Um, Martin Harwood, Astrophysical Concepts, page 553. Okay, let me look that up real quick. Doing some research. Martin Harwood. Physical Concepts. Let's see. I got it pulled up on Goodreads. Do we have a year? Do I have any kind of info on this? First published 1st of January 1973. So probably some date in 73 is when the first known copyright is. It looks like a book from 73. And he's probably using a version from 73. Of course. 50 plus years after the fact. This was 2023. So yeah, 50 years.
It could happen. And it must have happened because they're there. And they had to have formed through purely natural processes because, that's kind of the view. Furthermore, the nebula theory and the movement necessary to create the flattened disk were based on previous models of the solar system.
AJ, note that Joe will be doing the ARC Encounter Protest fundraiser stream later tonight. So leaving a kind of tight window for your stream not to overlap his or vice versa, if you care about such one way or the other.
However, we now know that the solar system is traveling around the galaxy at an average speed of 514,000 miles per hour.
Careful, buddy. You're starting to sound a lot like a flat earther.
143 miles per second. Did you know you were traveling 500,000 miles per hour? Yeah, you're really...
Relative to the center of the galaxy, sure. Yeah, I knew it. Relative to my position on Earth, not really.
Looking. And your hair's not even blowing. It's really cruising.
I don't understand how the universe works, so I'm going to make a stupid joke.
Watch this. This is one of the newest models of the solar system, which is referred to as the helical model, where the sun...
It's not a model of the solar system. That's a depiction of movement relative to the galactic core. It demonstrates the way the entire mass is moving. The entire thick structure, the thing that is the solar system as one object. You can think of a lot of things like that. You can map your position on Earth like that as it rotates and see the little little mini circles made. 365 of them every year. As the Earth moves and you rotate, you'd get that little circular pattern. It's just a nice depiction. That's not how we're moving in the way you should think about it.
Is traveling around the galaxy as the galaxy spins at an average speed of 500,000 miles per hour, pulling the planets with it in tow. Now, what an amazing thing that is. And can we understand the physics of that?
Yeah, very easily, very trivially. And something I do love about this this art is it happens to show us coasting upwards, quote unquote. from the galactic plane, because we do that. A lot of the stars kind of go up and down relative to the galactic plane. It's kind of cool.
That this motion is relying upon some larger scale motion in the galaxy, and the motion in the galaxy is probably even relying upon larger scale motions in the universe. All of that.
Again, it's all relative, though. What are you measuring relative to? You're already at a scale where relativity is critical in understanding one's perception of things, because these are distances where things would be light days away. I mean, it's 100,000 light years across the galaxy. When we see the galactic core, that's it like 40, 50,000 years ago. It's crazy. Like, we can't even get an actual snapshot of the state of the galaxy at this time, because stuff is so close yet so far away. We're getting a distorted view where the closest stuff, yeah, closer to us, but as you go further, oh yeah, by the time you reach the outer edges, not that we can see that far because of the zone of avoidance, you'd be seeing stuff 100,000 years how it was 100,000 years ago. And oddly, that phenomena holds true. When you see the far end of Andromeda, you're seeing it a good like 200,000 plus light years or years older than the closer parts of Andromeda if you take a good look at it. Blows your mind to think about. Might blow half my audience's mind. I don't know. I may not be phrasing it right, or the concept may just be that wild. This is one of those things that got me in trouble as a kid because I could wrap my head around this kind of shit. Can't socialize with people, but I sure as hell can map this out in my head mentally. But keep on going on about how magical this is to someone who, just ate this stuff up as a kid. I still do.
Motion brought down further and further to produce the motion of our solar system. I mean, oh. All right, well, the question we need to ask is this: what does the evidence?
Yeah, Rosina. Not Rosina, Laura. Sorry. I'm tired. From a standpoint of relative to the galaxy, we are moving like that. But it is a very slow procession, and it only appears that way from that perspective, because again, you're at a point where relativity matters. So yeah.
Really support? Does it support the nebula model, or does it support a biblical creation model?
Well, reality supports the actual model of things we see as we see them, because your biblical model is just fucking wrong. So deal with it.
The biblical creation model argues that the solar system formed recently by an intelligent creator to provide us with a habitable place to live. According to the nebula theory, every movement formed along similar lines and should not be too different from each other and conform to a single pattern.
No. The models for planetary origin in no way, shape, or form say that.
Is this what we actually find in the solar system? The closer that things are to one another in the solar system, the more similar they should be in composition, in form, and type. So let's take a look at the solar system, noting its design features and uniqueness that decries creation and defies the nebula theory. First, we'll look at the inner planets, what we call the terrestrial planets. These include Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. We'll start with Mercury. Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun. It's smaller than all the other planets except
God damn it, I just was muted the whole fucking time. This is one of those streams. I was saying, yeah, Rosina, what is the biblical creation model? It's a good question. I would say, see what you can find out about that. But more than likely, your time would be better spent making more AI abominations.
Pluto, even smaller than Ganymede and Titan, the moons of Saturn and Jupiter. Temperatures on Mercury range from 840 degrees to 180 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wouldn't you usually go from lower to higher? It's a little weird to do it the other way around.
Mercury looks much like our moon with lots of craters. If you didn't know this was Mercury, you would think this was a picture of the moon. This was photographed by the Messenger spacecraft back in 2008. Here's a colorized image of Mercury from Mariner 10. This was taken in 74, 75. Well, in addition,
That's an amalgamation of images. That's a spherical map made from the many, many images that Mariner 10 would have taken of Mercury in 74 and 75. This man's talking about spacecraft that I grew up loving. Come on, man. You're getting into rough territory. This is Chris we're talking about. I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff.
in addition to taking pictures of Mercury, Mariner 10 took measurements of Mercury's gravity and other properties, and they found a big surprise. It was discovered to have the highest known density of all planets.
You know why? Because Mercury is effectively a dead planetary core.
Other than the Earth. The problem is, Mercury's too small to have such a high density. Its small size means it doesn't have a strong gravitational field and should not have compacted all the material into such a high.
Give me just a moment before I respond to this.
Density. But
Because, I just decided to get my snack on, and that's when he says the stupidest thing in this entire video. Let's go back.
and should not have size means it doesn't. Mercury's too small to have such a high density. Its small size means it doesn't have a strong gravitational field and should not have compacted all the material into such a high density.
This fucking moron is leading the cart before the horse. Size is irrelevant. All that matters is how much matter is there. If you want more matter to be somewhere, you would pick something with more density. That's why lead is heavier than steel, because lead is far more dense. It's a much larger nucleus, a larger atom. Mercury is comprised almost exclusively of some of your very heavy metals and the like. Mostly normal stuff, we're talking like iron and the like, but a lot of other good stuff in there. When I say it's basically a dead planetary core, that's what I mean. It is effectively a planetary core of what would otherwise be a much bigger world, but it doesn't really have a conventional mantle and barely has a crust on it. Why that is, I'm not quite sure. Mercury is one of the least interesting planets for me, so I haven't read up too much on it. But, yeah. You've got everything ass backwards. Absolutely everything. Anyone who knows anything about the nature of planets, of gravity, of this kind of physics, and how it relates to space and planetary formation, upon hearing that, would most definitely have had the same reaction I did. Even if they were fucking Christian and they somehow knew this stuff in detail and yet still were into this kind of stuff, or are considering this kind of stuff, maybe on a religious journey or something, they would have been like, nope, that's just fucking wrong. Not that half the other stuff you said wasn't red flag city, but that was so ass backwards that I just don't have words. It's too small, so it shouldn't be that dense. All right, then please explain to me why neutron stars are as dense as they are, but they're so small. How does that work where a teaspoon weighs, multiple millions upon millions of tons? Because it's basically pure neutrons. Oops, all subatomic particles with no empty space. Let's not get started on the quark gluon plasma down below. Do you want to talk about the quark gluon plasma deep inside of neutron stars? Because I would love to talk about it, but I don't think you have the skills to discuss anything like that because you can barely even explain the basics of gravity, density, worth a damn. Are you a flat earther as well? Because I'm kind of wondering if this isn't some psyop and you're secretly a flat earther too. And this is just the gateway to get people into that.
But there it is with this incredibly high density. In fact, up to 75% of the radius of Mercury is thought to be represented by an iron core, shown here in a cutout view in this image from NASA. The solution to this mystery is described by Taylor in Solar System Evolution, A New Perspective. He says, the driving force behind previous attempts to account for Mercury has been to fit the high density of the planet into some preferred overall solar system scheme. It has become clear that none of these proposed models work, and the high density is conveniently accommodated by the large impact hypothesis, which makes Mercury unique. Thus, the hypothetical solution for Mercury's unusual density is known as the large impact hypothesis. It is believed that early in the history of the solar system, an asteroid must have crashed into Mercury. The lighter material must have been stripped away by this collision, leaving behind the dense planet that we see there today.
At that scale, it would have been another planetesimal, buddy. Kind of like Thea and how its impact with Earth formed the moon.
This is an artist's conception that shows a celestial body about the size of our moon slamming into Mercury at a great speed. Well, cosmic collisions are invoked to explain most of the unusual features of our solar system.
Citation needed. Define most of the unusual features of the solar system, but maybe they're used as explanation for different things because they actually happen. They're documented to happen. We know it happens. We've seen it happen. I'll be surprised if something ain't crashing around up there right freaking now. Last I checked, still hadn't seen your magic sky daddy.
So many, in fact, that we might consider them to have superpowers, as we will see.
Lame. Also, DC should sue.
Well, Mariner 10, again back in 74 and 75, also discovered that Mercury has a magnetic field, which was a huge mystery for decades. If it's billions of years old, it can't have a magnetic field.
No.
Unless the core is molten, enabling it to rejuvenate that magnetic field. But it's too small and too old to have a molten core. It should have frozen long ago. Now, this mystery remained for 3 decades until it was discovered in 2007 that Mercury has a molten core. Researchers...
Wow, what a surprise. We looked at the data more and realized, hey, we were probably wrong on our initial assessment of something. How interesting. We should do further research on this.
Working with high precision planetary radars, including the Goldstone Solar System radar of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, have discovered strong evidence that the planet Mercury has a molten core. The finding explains a more than 3-decade-old planetary mystery that began with the flight of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory's Mariner 10 spacecraft.
He was going to say Jeppel.
They continue. Scientists had not expected to find a magnetic field on Mercury, said Professor. Here. Planetary magnetic fields are associated with molten cores. And the prevailing theory was that the planet was too small to have a molten core. Scientists theorized that Mercury consisted of a silicate mantle surrounded by a solid iron core. This iron was considered solid, or so the theory went, because small planets like Mercury cool off rapidly after their formation. If Mercury followed this pattern, then its core should have been frozen long ago. But there it is. Mercury defies explanation. If the nebula theory...
And yet you just read explanations. My dude, do you not know what you're doing? How obvious it is, how full of it you are?
Is true. It can't be dense, but it is. It can't have a magnetic field, but it does. It can't have a molten core, but it does. Well, we're told by Paul in 1 Corinthians that God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God...
Yeah, and if that's a correct thing, then God is a prick, because that's an asshole thing to do, and that demonstrates that your God is, well, I already said it demonstrates your God's a prick, but kind of goes with what a lot of us have been saying. Your deity's kind of a jerk ass, and contradicts your claims that he's never going to lie to anybody, that it's so obvious, to believe him, blah, 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 all this bullshit I get tired of hearing every day.
God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty, truly. Well, let's look at Venus. It should be very similar to the Earth.
Yes, let's look at Venus. Because no God would allow a planet like Venus to exist.
Earth, it's our sister.
I mean, I don't know. I would if I was a deity, but that's just because, Venus is fucking badass. The planet is a metal hellscape. And I mean that in like the, Norwegian death metal, skulls and acid rain, and freaking makes Death Clock look like Teletubbies.
Sister planet, if you will, very close. Both planets supposedly formed at the same time, at roughly the same place, from the same material, by the same natural processes, and so should be very similar in size, mass, and composition. Well, Venus was recorded by the Jupiter-bound Galileo spacecraft shortly after its gravity-assisted flyby of Venus in 1990. Galileo's...
And there he goes, actually saying some stuff correct. I hate when he does that.
Glimpse of the veiled planet shows it swirling with sulfuric acid clouds. The atmosphere is primarily carbon dioxide with clouds of concentrated sulfuric acid. It has a massive greenhouse effect, making Venus the hottest place in the solar system. 900 degrees Fahrenheit. It also has a massive atmospheric pressure of 90 atmospheres. That's 90 times what we experience right here. And it has no magnetic field. A big mystery in explaining the origin of Venus is that it rotates backwards. It rotates retrograde, or what we clockwise, with respect to their orbit. Other planets rotate counterclockwise. Explanations for the backward rotation have included gravitational braking on a...
Venera landers had a good 30 to 45 minutes, if memory serves, of activity and data transit on there. Of course, they were immediately getting eaten away by the planet's surface, but we've got audio from the surface of Venus. We've got photos.
A tidal bulge, but Venus doesn't have a tidal bulge. It's almost perfectly round.
He's talking about Venus's lack of a bulge. That is funny.
Today's explanation is that Venus formed as predicted by the nebula accretion model, but then an asteroid hit it and spun it around the wrong way. The superpowers of the asteroid. Well, there's no evidence for a collision. Venus's axial tilt is only 2 degrees from perfectly perpendicular to the ecliptic plane of the solar system. Its orbit is the most circular in the solar system. The only evidence that it got struck by an asteroid is that otherwise Venus would contradict the nebula theory, rotating in a different direction than the other planets. What we're not told about Venus, it should be very similar to the Earth, but it has no magnetic field. And its crustal structure is very different. Its surface is obviously young, and it rotates the wrong way.
Oh, and then it ends. Hooray. It's over. Okay, so for the Venera probes, I went on and did a quick chat GPT skim. And this is the thing where, okay, when you want amalgamations of easy enough empirical data, and I've been comparing things, I find with a properly phrased question, ChatGPT to do a damn good job of returning some concise data. I also use it a lot for mathematic calculations. Again, I try to reverse these calculations, but it's still at the edge of advanced math for me. But it's enough to have the rough estimates I need for the project I'm working on, since I just need like relative values and understanding of stuff. But yeah, for Venera 7 lasted about 20 minutes. Venera 9, 53 minutes. Venera 10, 65 minutes. Venera 13, 127 minutes. And Venera 14, 57 minutes. So yeah, that's your values for them there probes. And I forget which Mariner. I think it was a Mariner mission that landed. That sent. It was atmospheric probes that some did land on the surface, still active, and returned data. They weren't equipped with cameras or anything. They were again atmospheric probes, but they did land there. Was it? Oh, maybe it was Pioneer Venus. Pioneer Venus was first of two spacecraft orbiter probe combinations done to study the atmosphere of Venus. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, it took me a minute to remember. Oh, yeah. Pioneer Venus was a whole damn thing. And I think, yeah, one of the orbiters was transmitting data. They were launched in the mid 70s. Pioneer Venus orbiter entered orbit around Venus December 4th, 1978, performed observations, characterized the atmosphere of the surface of Venus, continued to transmit data until October of 1992. So that thing was still launching when I was in second, or was still sending data when I was in second grade, which is pretty wild. But then again, while it's not active, America's first satellite is still in, not our first satellite, second one's still in orbit. Pioneer, Explorer 1 deorbited. Vanguard 1, that's still in orbit. And a few old ass satellites are still active. I mean, the having the video, having the photos of the surface of Venus is pretty cool, but the fact that even though it's relatively low quality, we have sound, that's wild. That is fucking wild. But yeah. Well, that took an hour and 23 minutes. Man, I should have stayed off of streaming today, but you know, I needed to make something happen. I felt like it. I had fun. Did y'all have fun? I had fun. A little frustrated in there, but whatever. I think we will definitely continue this series. Maybe look at more things from this channel. This is just an easy, fun, thing to rip apart. Hopefully, I'll just be a little less exhausted from the work week next time I decide to stream. But all right, AJ's got his stream planned tonight. Gonna review the debate Joe had with Ken Toford. Excuse me, and of course, Joe at Kentucky Atheist has the fundraiser stream for the ARC protest tonight. So plan your night accordingly, however you want to do it. And that's about that. Let's see. Just double checking. No, Voyager 1 and 2 are still. Voyagers are still. Their locations are still known. Pioneer's long gone. We know where both of them are. I mean, we know where the Voyagers should be, but we know where the Pioneers should be. but they've been completely shut down. And Voyagers, they're running on fumes, but radioactive fumes, but they're still kicking. Um, Damn yawns kicked in. I really need to get another coffee maker. I haven't had coffee in months. One of these days, I'll get around to buying some of the shit I need. Anyway, again, hope y'all had fun. That's gonna be the end of the stream. Check out the other streams coming up this evening. I'm going to play some Guild Wars, write some stuff, and relax for the rest of the night. So, y'all know where to